It was supposed to be the perfect vacation, a father-daughter getaway that Ethan Waller had planned for months, hoping to reconnect with his teenage daughter, Bella. The city of skyscrapers, luxury, and mystery was just the backdrop for the long-overdue bond they both needed to rebuild. But what was supposed to be a magical experience quickly turned into a nightmare. As father and daughter checked into the lavish Oasis Tower Hotel, everything seemed to align perfectly. Bella was eager to explore Dubai's wonders, the towering Burj Khalifa, the luxurious shopping malls, and the vibrant culture. Ethan, fresh from the sale of his tech startup, had promised himself this trip would be the reset they both needed. What could go wrong in a place so beautiful? But the following morning, when Ethan tried reaching Bella for breakfast, something felt off. Her phone went unanswered. Her door was locked, and when he entered, the room was empty, her belongings left behind. Panic set in. Ethan knew in his gut, this was no ordinary disappearance. Thank you my viewers and my subscribers. If you are new here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our new videos, and drop in the comment section, where you are watching from. Thank you. Ethan Waller was born and raised in the quiet suburbs of Seattle, Washington, the only child of a hardworking single mother, Karen Waller. From an early age, Ethan showed a knack for technology, often taking apart old gadgets and rebuilding them into something entirely new. His mother, a schoolteacher, encouraged his curiosity but also instilled a sense of responsibility in him. Hard work and perseverance, Ethan, she would always say, a mantra that stuck with him through the years. Despite growing up in a modest household, Ethan never lacked for love, even though his mother struggled to balance her career with raising him. Ethan's relationship with his father was non-existent. His father had left when he was a baby, and although he occasionally wondered about him, his mother made sure Ethan never felt his absence. By the time Ethan reached high school, he had developed a keen sense of independence. While other kids his age spent time playing sports or hanging out with friends, Ethan was often found buried in books, learning everything he could about computer programming. In his early 20s, Ethan moved to California to attend Stanford University, where he would eventually meet his future wife, Sarah. They were both ambitious, Ethan driven by his desire to create something groundbreaking, and Sarah drawn to the world of high finance. The two bonded over their shared passion for success, and after graduation, they co-founded a tech startup. Their business quickly gained traction, and within 5 years, it was sold for a staggering amount, making Ethan a wealthy man. However, the price of success was the erosion of his personal life. As his career took off, Ethan became a workaholic, pouring his time into the startup at the expense of his family. The divorce from Sarah came a year after the sale of the company. She had wanted more time with him, but Ethan had become consumed with his work, leaving her feeling alone and neglected. Bella, their only child, was just 14 at the time, and although Ethan tried to remain a present father, the emotional distance between them grew with each passing year. The tensions only intensified as Bella entered her teenage years, and Ethan's attempts to fix things always seemed to fall short. It was during this period that Ethan decided to take a step back from his tech empire and plan a trip with Bella to Dubai, hoping to reconnect and rebuild what had been lost. His hopes for the vacation were high, believing that time spent together might heal the wounds of the past. Little did he know, this trip would soon take a devastating turn. Bella Waller, at 17, had always been an independent and headstrong young woman. Growing up, she had always felt a bit neglected, torn between her father's constant work schedule and her mother's emotional distance. As a child, she had adored her father, admiring his intellect and work ethic. But as she entered adolescence, Bella began to resent his absence. His obsession with work made her feel invisible, and the quiet distance between them grew into something harder to ignore. Bella's mother, Sarah, wasn't much of a presence in her life either. While Sarah had always been there physically, emotionally she had withdrawn long before the divorce. Bella began to rebel against her mother's coldness, retreating further into her own world. She turned to photography, using it as both an escape and a form of expression. It was her way of capturing the world that felt so distant from her, the places she couldn't reach and the emotions she couldn't voice. Though Bella had a keen eye for photography, she was also caught in the turmoil of adolescence, craving independence yet feeling stifled by her parents' attempts to control her life. She had dreams of studying photography abroad, but those dreams often collided with the reality of her broken relationship with Ethan. The two barely spoke, their conversations often strained and full of tension. Yet, Bella still held on to the hope that this trip to Dubai might be a chance for her father to finally see her for who she truly was. In Dubai, Bella was excited to explore the world through her lens. The city's vibrant life, endless skyscrapers, and expansive desert were the perfect backdrop for her photographic ambitions. For the first time in years, she thought she could finally have something real with her father, some semblance of the connection they once had. But that hope would be shattered the moment she disappeared, leaving only questions behind. Victor Stein was a name that would soon haunt the Waller family, but to the people who knew him in Dubai, he was nothing more than an enigmatic tourist, someone who blended in with the crowds, his movements quick and quiet. Born in Eastern Europe, Victor grew up in a world of hardship. Raised in a family where survival was the primary goal, Victor learned early on that the rules of society did not apply to him. His childhood was marked by hardship, leading him down a darker path of manipulation, deceit, and violence. Victor's first foray into the world of crime was when he joined a small-time trafficking ring. But his ambition quickly outgrew the limited scope of his operations. Over the years, he expanded into more lucrative ventures, exploiting the vulnerable for profit. His unremarkable appearance, dark jacket, baseball cap, and a deliberate anonymity, made him the perfect predator in places like Dubai, where he could blend in seamlessly with the influx of international visitors. Victor first encountered Bella in the lobby of the Oasis Tower. He posed as a photographer looking for a fresh face to take photos for a supposed exclusive magazine. Bella, always eager for new opportunities to build her portfolio, agreed to meet him. What seemed like an innocent encounter quickly escalated into something far more terrifying. Victor's true intentions were not artistic, but exploitative. He lured Bella away from her father under the pretense of offering her an opportunity of a lifetime, only to lock her away in a storage unit. Victor's demeanor was calculated and calm, the kind of man who could charm his way into anyone's life, until he had what he wanted. His criminal background was hidden beneath layers of charm, and his methods were precise, even meticulous. However, his arrogance would eventually be his downfall. He had underestimated Bella's resilience and her ability to escape. The towering silhouette of the Oasis Tower pierced the Dubai skyline, its sleek glass facade reflecting the blazing sun as Ethan and Bella approached the grand entrance. Nestled in the heart of downtown Dubai, the hotel was a beacon of luxury, its modernity juxtaposed with the city's ancient Arabian roots. It stood as a monument to everything Dubai represented: wealth, ambition, and a sense of invincibility. As the father and daughter arrived, they marveled at the city's energy, the buzz of high-end shopping malls, the hum of luxury cars cruising down palm-lined streets, and the promise of adventure awaiting them at every corner. The hotel's lobby was as grand as its exterior, with marble floors that seemed to stretch endlessly and chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds overhead. The air was cool, a welcome contrast to the blistering desert heat outside. Ethan, feeling the weight of his successful career and recent divorce, welcomed the calm oasis the hotel provided. Bella, on the other hand, was swept up in the luxury, her eyes darting around at the towering palm trees inside, the exotic floral arrangements, and the glistening pools just visible through the massive windows. For the first time in months, Bella allowed herself to smile, allowing herself to believe that this trip might actually bridge the distance that had grown between her and Ethan. However, as they ascended the elevator to their room on the 19th floor, something lingered in the air, a subtle undercurrent that was hard to identify but impossible to ignore. It was as if the city's lavish exterior hid something darker, something buried beneath the surface. Ethan shook off the sensation, attributing it to the stress he had been under, the transition from workaholic to father. Bella, on the other hand, felt an unease she couldn't put into words. She couldn't explain it, but something about the hotel, its sheer opulence and overwhelming perfection, felt almost too perfect. It was as if the polished surfaces of the building were hiding cracks, cracks that no one seemed willing to acknowledge. The sun dipped below the horizon that evening, casting a warm golden hue across the horizon. The city sparkled under the night sky, and the father-daughter duo ventured out to experience the famous Dubai nightlife. Yet, as they walked through the buzzing streets, there was a feeling that lingered, like a shadow hanging just out of reach. As they shared dinner at a rooftop restaurant, overlooking the glittering city below, Ethan found himself distracted by the constant buzz of his phone, emails from work, messages from investors, notifications he had ignored for days. Bella, caught up in the excitement, laughed it off. But for a moment, Ethan could feel the weight of his previous life, the life he'd temporarily stepped away from, creeping back in. The city that was supposed to be a fresh start was beginning to feel like a trap. And in the quiet moments, when the bustling world of Dubai felt just a bit too far away, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting. But he ignored it. He had promised Bella a trip she would never forget, a time to reconnect and heal, but the shadows in the corners of his mind began to grow darker. The morning had started like any other. Ethan woke up early, checking his phone for emails, then proceeding with his usual routine of quietly preparing for the day. Bella had been unusually quiet the night before, but he chalked it up to the fatigue from the long flight and the excitement of the previous day. She'd promised to meet him for breakfast at 9:30 a.m., but as the clock ticked toward the appointed time, a nagging feeling settled in his chest. The hotel's pristine room felt colder now, as if the warmth of the previous evening had slipped away unnoticed. Ethan tried calling her phone at 9:30 a.m. It rang, but there was no answer. He wasn't overly concerned at first. Bella had always been a deep sleeper, especially when caught up in the excitement of a new place. He sent a quick text, assuming she'd join him for breakfast soon. The minutes stretched longer than he anticipated. Another call at 9:40 a.m., and still no response. A knot tightened in his stomach. It wasn't until 10 a.m. that panic began to edge into Ethan's thoughts. He stood up, walked to the door, and knocked on Bella's room. Silence. It was too quiet, unnervingly quiet. He tried the handle, it was locked. A pang of unease gnawed at him. He didn't want to overreact, but something was wrong. Why hadn't she answered? With a growing sense of urgency, Ethan reached into his bag and grabbed his spare keycard. His fingers trembled as he slid it into the slot. The door clicked open. What he saw inside sent a wave of shock through him. The room was perfectly still, too still. Her things were still there. Her camera. Her backpack. Her phone. Her shoes, left carelessly by the bed. But there was no sign of Bella. No sign of life. The bed had barely been disturbed, the room neat as if she'd never slept there at all. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, and his first instinct was to call out her name. Bella. His voice echoed off the high walls of the luxurious suite, but it fell on deaf ears. He ran through the entire suite, opening every drawer, looking under the bed, checking the bathroom. There was no sign of her. A cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. The panic crept in, every second stretching like a lifetime. What had happened? Without thinking clearly, he bolted out of the room, running toward the elevator. His mind raced. Was she angry with him? Had she walked off? Could something have happened to her? Had she met someone? At the front desk, Ethan demanded to speak to the hotel manager. His words were quick, sharp. I can't find my daughter. Something's wrong. The manager seemed confused but agreed to review the CCTV footage. Ethan paced nervously as the minutes crawled by, each one amplifying his anxiety. He needed answers. Then, finally, the manager motioned for him to approach the desk. The footage had been retrieved. The first image Ethan saw on the screen made his heart skip. At approximately 8:45 a.m., he saw Bella, looking calm but somewhat distracted, walking down the hallway. Her posture was relaxed, and she was carrying her camera bag over her shoulder, a gesture Ethan knew all too well. He didn't think much of it at first, but what happened next sent a chill down his spine. Bella, instead of walking toward the elevators, headed straight for the stairs. Alone. It struck Ethan as odd. He had known his daughter long enough to recognize that she never took the stairs unless there was a reason. She preferred the elevators for convenience. And yet, she was alone and heading down, her steps deliberate. Ethan's gut twisted, and he demanded to see the footage from a few minutes later. The timestamp changed to 9:05 a.m. The footage now showed a man. Tall, unremarkable at first glance, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap. His face was partially obscured, but it was clear he was heading for the elevator. Ethan couldn't place him. This man was not someone he recognized, and the way he moved, purposeful, almost like he had a specific destination, felt wrong. He seemed to appear out of nowhere, bypassing the front desk with ease. Ethan's breath quickened as he watched the man enter the elevator and then disappear from the footage. A sickening realization spread through him: the timing was too close. The man must have crossed paths with Bella. Had she known him? Was this some sort of setup? He glanced at the manager, who had been quiet until now. Can we track him? Who is he? The manager didn't seem to have answers. The man had entered through the back entrance, bypassing the normal check-in. We're working on it, the manager replied, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness gnawing at him. His daughter had walked out of the hotel alone, seemingly under her own power, but why? Why had she gone with this stranger? Was she in danger? The pieces didn't fit. There was no rational explanation, and as Ethan's fear rose to a fever pitch, he knew this wasn't some harmless, spontaneous decision. Something far worse was unfolding. The moment Ethan learned that Bella was missing, he went into overdrive. Panic, fear, and a sense of helplessness consumed him as he found himself navigating a foreign city, desperately trying to find his daughter. He couldn't comprehend the sheer scale of the situation, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't do this alone. With little hesitation, Ethan contacted the local authorities. The Dubai police quickly dispatched a team to assist in the investigation, but given the high-profile nature of the case and the international media attention it was attracting, the pressure was immense. Ethan tried to maintain composure as he met with the police, detailing everything he knew about Bella's disappearance. Every word he spoke felt like a nail in the coffin of his sanity. His voice cracked as he recounted their plans for the day, how they were supposed to have breakfast, how he tried calling her, how he found the empty hotel room. The police assured him that they would leave no stone unturned. However, despite their promises, the hours turned into days, and the investigation seemed to move in slow motion. Ethan was frustrated, but he held on to a shred of hope. There had to be something, anything, that would lead him to Bella. A few hours after the police began their investigation, they received a breakthrough. They tracked down the man from the CCTV footage, Victor Stein. The authorities quickly learned that he had checked into a nearby hotel under a false name, using a passport that seemed legitimate at first glance. This discovery sent a shock through Ethan. The man from the footage wasn't just a random stranger, he was someone with purpose. And now, it seemed like he was deliberately trying to hide. Ethan, desperate for more answers, hired a private investigator, a seasoned, no-nonsense woman named Mara Silva. Mara was known for her sharp intuition and her ability to dig deeper than the average investigator. Within the first few hours of joining the case, she was already poring over security footage from other areas of the city, seeking to trace Victor's movements. The investigator's experience was invaluable. Mara's first break came when she reviewed the footage from the parking garage of the hotel. The footage revealed a black van parked outside the Oasis Tower around 8:50 a.m., just minutes after Bella had walked out of the hotel room. The van was registered under a fake name, but a closer inspection of the video showed something else: a logo on the side of the van, a logo for a company specializing in logistics. The van appeared unremarkable at first, but now it stood as the only potential lead to connect Victor to whatever was happening to Bella. Ethan was clinging to this new piece of evidence. But as the days wore on, the hope that it would lead to something concrete was fading. The police followed leads, but many of them turned out to be false alarms. Hotel staff members were interviewed, no one seemed to know much. A couple of guests claimed they saw Bella in the lobby the morning she disappeared, but their stories didn't add up. One witness claimed to have seen her speaking to a man, but when asked for a description, they couldn't provide any solid details. Another person claimed Bella was seen leaving with a group, but no one else could confirm the sighting. Ethan's frustration grew. He felt like he was chasing ghosts. Despite the slow pace of progress, there were still moments that gave Ethan a glimmer of hope. A breakthrough came when the police discovered Bella's phone had been used in a remote part of the city, an area not far from the desert outskirts. The last known location pinged from a cell tower near a storage facility, hidden in a warehouse district. The discovery was a cold comfort, but it provided a new direction for the investigation. Ethan, Mara, and the police team rushed to the location. The area was desolate, surrounded by barren land and silent industrial buildings. The tension was palpable as they searched the area for any signs of Bella. At one of the storage units, they found a disturbing clue: Bella's camera, the same one she had carried the morning she disappeared. It was found near the entrance to a small, dilapidated storage facility, hidden among piles of discarded boxes. Mara bent down and picked up the camera, her brow furrowing as she examined it. "This is hers." "No doubt," she said, holding the camera out to Ethan. Ethan could barely bring himself to touch it, but he did. The weight of it in his hands was like holding a piece of his daughter's life, a life that had been ripped away from him in an instant. Despite the new evidence, there was still no sign of Bella. The hours turned to days, and the investigation seemed to be at a standstill. Ethan was exhausted, mentally, physically, and emotionally drained. He had to endure the relentless pressure of the media, the constant interviews, and the painful updates from the police, none of which brought any comfort. The weight of not knowing gnawed at him. The silence was unbearable. Then, just as hope was beginning to wane, a new tip came through. An anonymous caller had provided information that led the police to a hidden apartment on the outskirts of Dubai. The caller claimed that Bella had been spotted there, alive but in distress. With no time to waste, the authorities descended on the location, Ethan's heart hammering in his chest. This was it, this was the moment they had all been waiting for. The police broke down the door, and inside, they found Bella. She was alive, though visibly shaken. Her hands were bound, and she appeared weak from the ordeal. But there was no mistaking the relief that flooded Ethan's chest when he saw her. She was finally found. Bella's escape from her captor was nothing short of miraculous. She had been kept in a small storage unit, locked away for weeks. Yet, in her determination and resilience, she managed to escape, using her wits and the small resources available to her. She had fought her way free and managed to find help. As Bella was escorted to safety, Ethan could barely contain his emotions. It was a moment of triumph, but it was also bittersweet. The emotional toll of the past few days had left him broken, but he was thankful. Bella was alive, and that was all that mattered. The rescue of Bella had brought a sense of relief, but it was far from the end of the story. Ethan, standing in the sterile hospital room where Bella was being treated, couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was still wrong. Yes, she was physically safe, but the emotional scars she carried were deep. She hadn't spoken much about her time in captivity, only that she'd managed to escape. But the more Ethan tried to piece together the events of her disappearance, the more questions arose. The answers didn't align, and the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't ignore the inconsistencies. It was late one evening when the breakthrough came, when the revelation hit Ethan like a bolt from the blue. Mara Silva, the private investigator who had been working tirelessly on the case, called him. There was urgency in her voice, but also something he couldn't quite place, an edge of excitement, perhaps even shock. "Ethan, you need to come to the station now. We found something that changes everything. Ethan's heart raced. He immediately grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door. What could it be? Another lead? Something that finally brought clarity to Bella's ordeal? When he arrived at the police station, he was led into a small, dimly lit room where Mara and the detective in charge of the case, Lieutenant Ahmed, were waiting. Mara didn't waste time. We've reviewed more footage. Not from the hotel, but from the parking lot, a different angle we didn't see before. I think you need to see it for yourself. The footage was grainy, the colors muted, but it was unmistakable. Ethan leaned in as Mara hit play. At first, the footage seemed uneventful, just cars passing by. But then, at the 8:50 a.m. mark, just minutes after Bella was seen leaving the hotel, the camera caught something unexpected. The van Victor Stein had been using earlier was there, but it wasn't empty. There, standing by the van, was a woman. She was tall, with dark hair, and the moment the camera zoomed in on her face, Ethan's heart froze. The woman on the screen wasn't Bella, at least, that's what Ethan thought. But then, something in her eyes, something familiar, struck him. The woman looked directly at the camera. And in that split second, Ethan could see it, there was something in her gaze that echoed his daughter's eyes. He felt the air leave his lungs. This is impossible, he whispered. He turned to Mara and Lieutenant Ahmed, his voice shaking. That's not Bella, is it? But as the footage played on, the woman in the video did something that confirmed his deepest fear, she smiled. It was a smile Ethan had seen countless times before. It was Bella's smile. Ethan's mind raced. The woman on the screen looked exactly like Bella, but Bella had been locked away, held captive in that storage unit. The police had just rescued her. There was no way she could have been there with Victor, unless the woman in the video was someone else entirely, someone who had been masquerading as Bella all along. Mara was silent for a moment, letting the weight of the discovery sink in. Ethan, we've been looking in the wrong direction this whole time. What if Bella was never kidnapped? What if the real Bella didn't leave the hotel that morning? What if the person we've been rescuing was never your daughter to begin with? The words hit Ethan like a slap. His mind reeled. What was she saying? That the woman he had been holding in his arms, the girl he had thought was his daughter, wasn't Bella? He stared at the screen, unable to take his eyes off the woman who looked so much like her. The resemblance was undeniable. But the question was, who was she? And where was Bella? It didn't make sense. How could someone have gone to such lengths to impersonate his daughter? Had he been duped? Had someone used Bella's disappearance to trick him into thinking he was saving her? Ethan felt his legs give out, and he sank into a chair. But the girl we rescued. I spoke to her, I held her, I believed it was her. Believe me, I know, Mara said softly, her voice gentle but firm. But there's more. The DNA tests came back today. The girl you've been speaking to, she's not Bella. She's someone else entirely. We don't have her name yet, but we're working on it. A cold sweat broke out on Ethan's forehead. So, where is Bella? He asked, his voice cracking. Where is my daughter? Mara looked him in the eyes, her gaze resolute. I don't know yet. But I promise you, we're going to find her. And when we do, we'll get the answers we need. Ethan stood, his whole body trembling. The world seemed to collapse around him. He had just endured the most terrifying ordeal of his life, convinced he had rescued his daughter from certain danger. But now, the entire foundation of what he believed to be true had been shattered. The girl who had been in his arms wasn't Bella, and now the hunt for the real Bella was more urgent than ever. The discovery raised 100 more questions. Who was the woman in the video? Why did she pretend to be Bella? And most importantly, where was his real daughter? As the room began to spin, Ethan felt a mix of terror and determination surge through him. He would find his daughter. Nothing, no revelation, no twist in the story, would stop him now. The weeks following the revelation were a blur for Ethan. The entire ordeal had turned his world upside down. What had once been a straightforward search for his missing daughter had morphed into a chilling mystery. The discovery that the girl he had been holding in his arms, the girl he had believed was Bella, was nothing more than an imposter sent shockwaves through him. Nothing about the situation made sense anymore, and every new piece of information only deepened the confusion. The authorities continued their search for the real Bella, but the uncertainty gnawed at Ethan's heart. The imposter had given them little to go on. She had provided a false name and claimed she had no memory of what had happened. But as the investigation progressed, the police began piecing together the fragments. They learned that the woman wasn't just a random person. She had been involved in human trafficking, likely part of the same criminal network that Victor Stein was connected to. But why had she impersonated Bella? The question lingered, unanswered, like a haunting specter. Ethan spent countless hours combing through old photographs, video footage, and personal records, trying to find a clue that might lead him to his daughter. Each day, he questioned his decisions. How had he missed the signs? How had he allowed himself to be so easily fooled? The guilt weighed heavily on him. His mind replayed every moment from the day Bella disappeared, every conversation, every glance. Had there been something he could have done differently? Had he overlooked a crucial detail? Despite the guilt and frustration, one thing remained clear: Ethan wasn't going to give up. The police continued to follow leads, but Ethan took matters into his own hands, hiring additional private investigators and reaching out to anyone who might have seen something. His obsession with finding Bella became all-consuming. The emotional toll was visible. He hadn't slept properly in days, his eyes hollow from the sleepless nights spent worrying. Yet, despite the exhaustion and the emotional drain, Ethan pushed forward. The imposter's confession had led the authorities to uncover a wider network of traffickers, but the search for Bella was still in its early stages. No one had any concrete leads. The search areas expanded across Dubai, and soon, neighboring regions were being scoured for any sign of Bella. For Ethan, every passing hour felt like a year. The uncertainty was suffocating, and each day, he feared the worst. But through all the turmoil, there was one thing that kept Ethan going, the hope that, despite everything, Bella was still out there. Alive. He held on to that belief, no matter how unlikely it seemed. Every lead, no matter how small, was a step closer to finding her. He couldn't stop now. The imposter may have left a trail of confusion, but she had also opened a door that, once fully explored, could lead Ethan to the truth. He had already lost so much, but he wouldn't lose her. The emotional fallout from the revelation was profound. Ethan had spent days trying to rebuild the pieces of his life, searching for answers that seemed out of reach. But he knew one thing with certainty: no matter how much time it took, he would never stop looking for his daughter. He stood in the quiet of his hotel room, the city lights of Dubai twinkling in the distance, a symbol of the world that continued to move forward, unaffected by the chaos he was enduring. Yet, within his heart, there was a fire that had yet to be extinguished. His journey to find Bella wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Thank you for tuning in to this gripping true crime story. If you were as shocked by the twists and turns as we were, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling updates. Your support means the world to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below with your theories, and let us know where you're watching from. And be sure to stay with us. Next time, we'll dive into another mysterious case that will leave you questioning everything. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and keep exploring the darker corners of the world with us.